A wealthy Dubai entrepreneur disguises himself as a humble driver to uncover the truth about his wife's mysterious late-night disappearances. But what he discovers will shake his world to its core. Why is she meeting with an elderly artist in a rundown studio in old Dubai? What secrets lie hidden in her past, and why is a dangerous man circling her like a predator in the shadows? As lies unravel and buried truths come to light, this journey will test the strength of their love, the depth of their trust, and the limits of forgiveness. What is she hiding, and why does she believe she's unworthy of redemption? Watch the full story to follow this gripping tale of betrayal, love, and redemption that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe now to hear more powerful and emotional stories like this one. The story begins on a quiet evening in Dubai, where the glimmering city lights can't conceal the emptiness that haunts a man's heart. The lights of Dubai sparkled like fallen stars against the velvet night sky. From the balcony of his penthouse, Karim Al-Zafir watched the city below, the sprawling desert in the distance blending into the horizon. His empire, built with tireless ambition, was as vast as the sands stretching beyond the city. And yet tonight, the glittering world felt impossibly small, the walls of his life closing in. A gentle knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Zara, his younger sister, who strode into the room with her usual confidence, her dark curls bouncing against her shoulders. She wore an expression that was both concerned and exasperated, as if she had seen this version of Karim too many times before. "Brooding on the balcony again?" Zara teased, folding her arms as she leaned against the doorframe. "That's not going to solve anything." Karim let out a humorless laugh, running a hand through his neatly trimmed hair. "And what would you suggest? Pretend everything's fine, while whispers about my wife circulate through the city?" Zara's smile faltered. "You're really letting this get to you, aren't you?" Karim turned to face her, his amber eyes clouded with worry. "Wouldn't it get to you? Alia's been distant, distracted. She comes home late, and when I ask her where she's been, she's evasive. Then there are the rumors. People are saying she's been seen in old Dubai. What could she possibly be doing there?" Zara sighed, stepping closer. "Look, I get it. If I were in your position, I'd be worried too. But jumping to conclusions doesn't help. You trust her, don't you?" "That's just it," Karim said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I do anymore." The weight of his admission hung in the air. Zara reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Karim, you're overthinking. Alia loves you. Whatever's going on, it's probably not what you think. Then why won't she tell me the truth?" His voice cracked, and he turned back toward the balcony, staring out into the night. "She used to confide in me. Now it feels like there's this wall between us." Zara hesitated, as if considering her next words carefully. "Then maybe you need to take matters into your own hands. Find out what's really going on, but do it carefully. Don't let your paranoia ruin what you have." The following day, Karim sat in the sleek confines of his office, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only sound as he stared at his computer screen. His assistant had left hours ago, and the sprawling skyline outside was now bathed in the warm hues of sunset. On the desk in front of him was a photograph of him and Alia from their wedding day. Her smile radiant, his expression one of quiet pride. He picked it up, running his thumb along the edge of the frame. What had changed? A notification pinged on his phone, snapping him out of his reverie. It was a message from Faisal, his childhood friend, and the only person he trusted implicitly. Faisal had always been his rock, the one person who grounded him when the pressures of his life became overwhelming. "Karim, what's going on?" You sounded tense earlier. Want to talk? Kareem hesitated for a moment before typing a reply. I need your help. Can we meet tonight? Faisal's workshop was a far cry from the luxury Kareem was used to. The small garage in old Dubai smelled of oil and metal, the walls lined with tools and spare parts. It was a place of simplicity, a stark contrast to the polished world Kareem inhabited. Let me get this straight, Faisal said, crossing his arms as he leaned against the workbench. You want to disguise yourself as a driver to follow your wife? What had changed? A notification pinged on his phone, snapping him out of his reverie. It was a message from Faisal, his childhood friend, and the only person he trusted implicitly. Faisal had always been his rock, the one person who grounded him when the pressures of his life became overwhelming. Kareem, what's going on? You sounded tense earlier. Want to talk? Kareem hesitated for a moment before typing a reply. I need your help. Can we meet tonight? Faisal's workshop was a far cry from the luxury Kareem was used to. The small garage in old Dubai smelled of oil and metal, the walls lined with tools and spare parts. It was a place of simplicity, a stark contrast to the polished world Kareem inhabited. Let me get this straight, Faisal said, crossing his arms as he leaned against the workbench. You want to disguise yourself as a driver to follow your wife? Kareem nodded, his expression grim. I know how it sounds, but I can't just sit around and do nothing. I need to know the truth. Faisal studied him for a moment before letting out a low whistle. You've officially lost it. Faisal, Kareem said, his tone pleading. You're the only one I can trust with this. Will you help me or not? Faisal shook his head, but couldn't suppress a small grin. You've got guts. I'll give you that. Fine. But if this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. The transformation was startling. Gone were the tailored suits and polished shoes. In their place was a simple white shirt, loose trousers, and a dusty cap. Kareem stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror of Faisal's workshop, hardly recognizing the man looking back at him. You clean up nicely, Faisal quipped, tossing him a set of keys. Here's your car. Nothing fancy. Just an old sedan that won't draw attention. And remember, if Alia catches on— She won't, Kareem interrupted, his jaw set. She can't. The plan was simple. Kareem had created a false identity, complete with a forged driver's license and background. Through a local rideshare app, he had found a way to position himself as Alia's new driver, ensuring he could follow her every move without arousing suspicion. When the notification came through that Alia had requested a ride, his heart raced. This was it, the moment of truth. The drive was quiet. Alia sat in the back seat, her gaze focused out the window as the city lights danced across her face. Kareem stole glances at her through the rearview mirror, his mind racing with questions. Where was she going? And why hadn't she told him? Take the next left, she said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. Kareem nodded, adjusting the wheel. His palms were sweaty, and he gripped the steering wheel tighter to steady himself. He couldn't afford to slip up. They entered old Dubai, the narrow streets bustling with life. The vibrant souk came into view, its colourful stalls brimming with spices, fabrics and trinkets. Alia directed him to stop in front of a modest building with a faded sign that read, Hassan's Studio. Wait here, she said, stepping out of the car. Kareem watched as she disappeared inside, his curiosity reaching a fever pitch. He debated following her, but knew it was too risky. Instead, he waited, his mind a whirlwind of suspicion and confusion. When Alia finally returned, her expression was unreadable. She slid back into the car without a word, her gaze distant as she stared out the window. Home? Kareem asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Yes, she replied softly. The drive back was even quieter than before. Karim's mind raced with possibilities. Who was Hassan? And what could Alia possibly be doing in a place like that? As they approached the gates of the Al Zafir mansion, Karim couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The answers he sought were out there, just beyond his reach, and he was determined to find them, no matter the cost. The pale morning light filtered through the towering windows of the Al Zafir mansion, casting golden streaks across the polished marble floors. The house, as grand and imposing as a palace, exuded a quiet emptiness that mirrored Karim's growing unease. He sat in the expansive dining room, his untouched breakfast laid out like a feast before him. Yet the sight of food only churned his stomach further. His thoughts were consumed by Alia. Every detail of the previous night played out in his mind, each moment growing heavier with questions. Hassan's studio, the mysterious envelope, her soft, almost intimate tone when she spoke to the old man. What connection could Alia possibly have with him? And why had she kept it hidden? Karim, Zara's voice echoed softly as she entered the room, her sharp heels clicking against the floor. She stopped just short of the table, leaning casually against the chair opposite him. "You're staring at that plate like it owes you answers. Care to share what's going on?" He glanced up at his sister, her perceptive eyes narrowing as she studied him. For a moment, he considered brushing her off, but the tension inside him begged for release. "I followed Alia again last night," he admitted, his voice low, almost ashamed. "She went back to that studio in old Dubai." Zara raised an eyebrow, her lips pressing into a thin line. "And? What did you find?" Karim hesitated. "She's meeting with an old man, Hassan. She gave him money, or something in an envelope. They talked like they've known each other for years." Zara crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "And this Hassan? What do you know about him?" "Nothing," Karim admitted, frustration creeping into his tone. "Except that he's connected to her in ways I don't understand. There's another name too, Noura. Hassan mentioned her, said she needs time to come around. I don't know who she is or what she has to do with any of this." Zara exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "You're digging yourself deeper, Karim. Do you hear yourself? You're turning this into some grand conspiracy when it could be something simple. Alia has always cared about people. Maybe she's helping this man out of kindness." "If it's simple, why hide it from me?" Karim snapped, his voice rising before he caught himself. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "She knows I'd support her. Why keep me in the dark?" "Maybe you're looking at this the wrong way," Zara said carefully. "Instead of assuming the worst, why not focus on the fact that she's clearly trying to do good? Whatever this is, it's probably not as sinister as you think." Karim's jaw tightened. Zara meant well, but her reassurances felt hollow. The secrecy still gnawed at him, a wound that refused to heal. "I need answers, Zara," he said finally, "and I'm not going to get them by sitting here and pretending everything is fine." Zara sighed, her expression softening. "Just be careful. The more you push, the more damage you could do, to her and to yourself." That evening, as the golden hues of the sunset bathed the city, Karim prepared himself once again. He donned his disguise, transforming into Youssef with a practiced ease that left him feeling hollow. The worn cap, loose shirt, and aged sandals felt like armor, necessary but suffocating. When he arrived at the mansion's entrance, Alia was already waiting. She looked serene, her abaya flowing gracefully in the evening breeze. Yet there was a distance in her expression, as if her mind was elsewhere. "Good evening, ma'am," Karim greeted, his voice steady but devoid of emotion. "Good evening," Alia replied, slipping into the back seat. She gave him the same address as the previous nights, Hassan's studio in Old Dubai. The drive began in silence, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Karim stole glances at her through the rearview mirror, his curiosity burning like a wildfire. Alia's gaze was fixed on the skyline, her features calm but unreadable. "Old Dubai must mean a lot to you," Karim ventured, his tone casual. Alia's eyes flickered toward the mirror, her expression betraying a hint of surprise. "Why do you say that?" "Most people I drive prefer the new parts of the city. The souk, the older streets. They're not for everyone." Alia smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "There's a beauty in things that have withstood the test of time, don't you think?" Karim nodded, though her answer only deepened his curiosity. What was she searching for in those weathered streets? What was she holding on to? When they arrived, Alia stepped out of the car with her usual grace, pausing only to say, "Wait for me, I won't be long." Karim watched her disappear into the narrow alley, her silhouette swallowed by the shadows of the old city. His pulse quickened. This time, he couldn't just sit idly by. He needed to see for himself. Carefully, Karim followed her path, keeping a safe distance as he navigated the bustling streets of the souk. The air was thick with the scent of spices and incense, the chatter of merchants blending with the calls of customers. His heart pounded as he approached Hassan's studio, its modest exterior unassuming amidst the lively market. Through the slightly ajar window, he saw them. Alia stood beside Hassan, her expression warm as they spoke. The old man gestured toward a canvas resting on an easel, his weathered hands moving with the passion of an artist. Alia listened intently, her head nodding as he explained something Karim couldn't hear. The scene felt intimate, almost sacred. Yet, it was the figure in the corner who caught Karim's attention. A young woman, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, watched the interaction with wary eyes. Her stance was defensive, her expression guarded. "Noura," Hassan said, his voice carrying through the still night. "Come here, Alia is trying to help us." "I don't need her help," Noura replied sharply, her tone laced with defiance. "We don't need charity." "Noura," Hassan began, but Alia stepped forward, her voice gentle yet firm. "It's not charity," Alia said, her gaze meeting Noura's. "It's respect. Your grandfather's work deserves to be seen. It deserves a place in the world." Noura scoffed, shaking her head. "And you think you're the one to give it that place? A woman who lives in a world of luxury and privilege? What do you know about us?" The words hit like a slap, and Karim saw the flicker of pain in Alia's eyes. But she didn't waver. "I know what it feels like to carry a burden you can't share," Alia said softly. "To want to protect the people you love, even when it feels impossible." The sincerity in her voice seemed to catch Noura off guard. She hesitated, her expression softening for a brief moment before she turned away. Karim's chest tightened. This wasn't the woman he thought he knew. Alia's strength, her compassion, it was all laid bare in that moment. Yet the secrets remained. Who was Hassan to her? And why was she so invested in his work? The ride back was quieter than ever. Alia seemed lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the horizon as the city lights danced in the distance. Karim wanted to ask her, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. When they reached the mansion, Alia paused before stepping out. "Thank you, Youssef," she said softly. "I'll need you again tomorrow." Karim nodded, his heart heavy with unanswered questions. As he watched her disappear into the house, one thing became clear. The truth was far more complex than he had imagined, and the deeper he dug, the more tangled the web became. The wind was restless that evening, carrying the scents of the desert into the city. Dubai's skyline glittered as always, its glass towers standing as monuments of progress and ambition. Yet Karim al-Zafir felt no pride as he gazed out at the city from his penthouse balcony. The view that had once symbolized achievement now felt like an unspoken reminder of all he didn't understand. Alia's words from the night before lingered in his mind, echoing over and over. It's not charity, it's respect. She had spoken with such conviction, such emotion, but for all her sincerity, she hadn't answered the question that mattered most. Why had she kept this part of her life hidden from him? The sharp buzz of his phone pulled Karim from his thoughts. He checked the screen. It was Faisal. "Hey," Karim answered, his voice heavy. "Hey yourself," Faisal said. "You sound like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders." Karim let out a dry laugh. "That's not far from the truth." "Let me guess. Alia?" "Who else?" Karim replied, running a hand through his hair. He walked inside, pacing the room as he spoke. "I've been following her for days, Faisal. She's supporting this old man, Hassan, and his work. There's another woman, Noura, who seems angry about it all. But I can't make sense of any of it. None of this explains why Alia's been hiding it from me." "Have you confronted her?" Faisal asked. Karim hesitated. "Not yet. I need more answers first. I can't go in blind." "Careful, Karim," Faisal warned. "The more you dig, the more you risk tearing things apart." Karim sighed. "I don't have a choice. If she won't tell me the truth, I have to find it myself." The following evening, Karim once again found himself driving Alia to Old Dubai. She had given him the same instructions as always, her tone calm but distant. As they entered the souk, she seemed more preoccupied than usual, her gaze drifting out the window as though lost in thought. When they arrived, she stepped out of the car and walked toward Hassan's studio, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of the market's lanterns. Karim waited until she disappeared inside before slipping out of the car and taking his usual place in the shadows. Through the slightly open window, he watched as Alia handed Hassan a beautifully wrapped box. The old man's eyes lit up as he carefully unwrapped it, revealing a set of high-quality paintbrushes and a sketchbook. "Alia," Hassan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You shouldn't have." "You deserve it," Alia replied, her tone warm. "Your art deserves to shine, Hassan. This is just a small gesture." "You deserve it," Alia replied, her tone warm. "Your art deserves to shine, Hassan. This is just a small gesture." "It's not pity," Alia said gently, though her voice carried a firmness that demanded attention. "This is about honoring his talent, Noura. Your grandfather's work deserves to be seen." Noura scoffed. "And you think you're the one to make that happen? You with your wealth and your perfect life?" Hassan turned to Noura, his expression weary. "Enough, child. Alia has been nothing but kind to us." Noura shook her head, her frustration spilling over. "You don't see it, do you? People like her, they throw money at problems and call it generosity, but they don't understand what it's like to struggle, not really." Alia stepped forward, her eyes locking with Noura's. "You're right," she said softly, surprising both Hassan and Noura. "I don't know what it's like to struggle the way you have, but I do know what it feels like to carry a burden you can't share, to live with secrets that weigh on you every day." Karim's breath caught in his throat. Secrets. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Was this Alia's way of admitting there was more to this story than she had let on? Noura seemed momentarily taken aback, but her defiance quickly returned. "And what secrets would someone like you have?" Alia hesitated, her expression flickering with pain. "More than you think." The room fell silent, the tension thick and unyielding. Karim's heart pounded as he tried to make sense of what he had just heard. Alia's words hinted at a depth he hadn't expected. a side of her he had never seen. The drive back to the mansion was quieter than ever. Alia seemed lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Karim wanted to ask her about what she had said, to press her for answers, but he knew he couldn't, not without revealing his disguise. As they neared the gates, Alia finally spoke, her voice soft. "Do you believe in redemption, Yusuf?" Karim blinked, startled by the unexpected question. "Redemption?" "Yes," Alia said, her eyes meeting his in the rearview mirror. "Do you think it's possible to atone for past mistakes, to make things right?" Karim's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I think it depends on the person and the mistake." Alia nodded, her expression unreadable. "Sometimes I wonder if it's ever truly possible." Before Karim could respond, she opened the door and stepped out, leaving him with more questions than ever. The next day, Karim met with Faisal in a quiet cafe in the heart of the city. The two sat in a secluded corner, their conversation low and urgent. "She's hiding something, Faisal," Karim said, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Last night, she said something about redemption, about atoning for mistakes. What does that even mean?" Faisal frowned, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds like she's dealing with something personal, something from her past." "Then why won't she tell me?" Karim asked, his voice rising. "We're supposed to be partners. She's supposed to trust me." "Maybe she's afraid," Faisal said carefully. "Sometimes people hide things because they're scared of how others will react, even the people they love." Karim leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I just want to understand. But every time I think I'm getting closer, it feels like she's slipping further away." Faisal placed a hand on Karim's shoulder, his gaze steady. "You'll find the truth, Karim. Just be careful. Don't let your doubts destroy what you have with her." That evening, Karim prepared for another trip to Old Dubai. This time, however, he wasn't content to merely watch from the shadows. He needed answers, real answers. As Alia stepped into the car and gave her usual instructions, Karim's heart pounded with anticipation. Tonight, he vowed, he would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost him. The warm glow of lanterns flickered across the winding alleys of Old Dubai as Karim followed Alia through the bustling souk. The scents of spices and oud mingled with the lively chatter of merchants and customers. Each step he took felt heavier, the weight of his unresolved doubts pressing down on him. Alia moved gracefully ahead, her abaya trailing softly against the stone paths, the faint shimmer of gold embroidery catching the light. She seemed entirely at ease, unaware of the eyes that followed her so intently. Karim kept a careful distance, his disguise as Yusuf allowing him to blend into the background. But tonight, his curiosity burned hotter than ever. When Alia disappeared into Hassan's studio, Karim lingered outside. This time, he wasn't content to simply watch. He needed answers. Gathering his courage, he slipped around the side of the building, finding a small, half-open window. From this vantage point, he could see and hear everything. Inside, Hassan sat in a worn armchair, a sketchbook resting on his lap. His face, lined with age, lit up as Alia handed him another envelope. Karim strained to hear their conversation, his heart racing with anticipation. "This is too much, Alia," Hassan said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've already done so much for us." "It's not enough," Alia replied, her tone firm but kind. "Your work deserves more than just survival. It deserves recognition." Hassan shook his head, his eyes misty. "I don't know what I did to deserve someone like you in my corner." Before Alia could respond, Noura entered the room, her expression as cold and guarded as ever. She folded her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Still playing the hero, I see," she said, her voice sharp. "Do you ever get tired of pretending to care?" "Noura," Hassan warned, his tone weary. "No, let her speak," Alia interjected, turning to face Noura. "If you have something to say, say it." Noura's eyes narrowed. "I don't understand why you're doing this. What's in it for you? Is this about guilt? Or is it just another way for you to feel superior?" Alia's gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. "This isn't about me. It's about honoring your grandfather's work. He's an artist, one of the best I've ever seen. The world deserves to see that." "And what about us?" Noura countered, her voice rising. "You come here with your money and your perfect life, but you don't understand what it's like to struggle every day. You don't know what it's like to fight for every scrap of dignity." Alia took a step closer, her expression filled with an unexpected vulnerability. "You're right. I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it feels like to carry a burden you can't share, to live with mistakes that haunt you every day." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Karim's breath caught in his throat. Mistakes? What mistakes? He leaned closer to the window, desperate to catch every word. "You don't have to trust me, Noura," Alia continued, her voice soft but unwavering. "But I promise you, I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want to help." Noura didn't respond immediately. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment Karim thought she might leave. But then she turned to Hassan, her eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and love. "It's your decision, grandfather. Do what you think is best." Hassan reached out, placing a gentle hand on Noura's arm. "Alia has been a blessing to us, child. I know you're worried, but she's only ever wanted to help." Noura exhaled sharply, clearly struggling to let go of her anger. Without another word, she left the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Karim's heart pounded as he watched Alia and Hassan continue their conversation. There was a tenderness in the way they spoke, a bond that felt deeper than mere charity. But what was the connection? Why was Alia so invested in this man and his family? The ride back to the mansion was quiet, as it often was. Alia sat in the back seat, her hands resting in her lap. She seemed lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the city lights outside. Karim wanted to ask her about what he had heard, to confront her about the secrets she was keeping, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he broke the silence with a question that had been on his mind since the night before. "Do you believe in forgiveness, Ma'am?" Alia's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, meeting his gaze. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then she said softly, "I want to." Karim frowned, her answer only deepening the mystery. "Why wouldn't you?" "Because sometimes," Alia said, her voice tinged with sadness, "forgiveness feels like a luxury I don't deserve." Her words struck Karim like a blow. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his thoughts racing. What could Alia have done to feel this way? What secret was she carrying that made her believe she wasn't worthy of forgiveness? When they reached the mansion, Alia paused before stepping out of the car. "Thank you, Youssef," she said, her voice soft. "I'll need you again tomorrow." Karim nodded, watching as she disappeared into the house. But this time he didn't linger. He drove away, his mind churning with unanswered questions. He needed to know the truth, and he was willing to do whatever it took to find it. The next day, Karim made a decision. He couldn't keep piecing together fragments of the truth. He needed someone who could dig deeper, someone who could uncover the secrets Alia was hiding. Reluctantly, he contacted a private investigator, a man named Latif, known for his discretion and skill. Latif met Karim in a secluded cafe, his sharp eyes assessing him with quiet curiosity. "What exactly do you want me to find out?" Latif asked, his voice calm but professional. "Everything," Karim replied, his tone firm. I need to know who this Hassan is, why Alia is supporting him, and what connection she has to this family. Leave no stone unturned. Latif nodded, slipping a small notebook from his pocket. Consider it done. I'll update you as soon as I have something. As Karim left the cafe, a sense of unease settled over him. He had taken a step he couldn't undo, a step that felt both necessary and dangerous. But the truth was worth the risk, or so he told himself. That evening, Karim once again drove Alia to Old Dubai. This time, he noticed something unusual. A sleek black car was parked near Hassan's studio, its tinted windows glinting under the dim streetlights. Karim's instincts prickled. Whoever this car belonged to, they didn't fit the humble surroundings of the souk. When Alia entered the studio, Karim lingered outside, his eyes fixed on the car. After a few moments, the door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall and well-dressed, his features sharp and commanding. Karim watched as the man walked toward the studio, his expression unreadable. Inside, voices rose, the muffled sound of an argument reaching Karim's ears. He crept closer, his heart pounding. Through the window, he saw Alia standing her ground, her voice firm as she confronted the man. You shouldn't be here, she said, her tone cold. I have every right to be here, the man replied, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can keep me out of this, out of their lives? This isn't about you, Alia said sharply. This is about Hassan, about his work. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The man stepped closer, his presence imposing. You've always had a way of making things harder, haven't you? Alia's jaw tightened, her eyes blazing with defiance. I won't let you ruin this. Karim's blood ran cold. Who was this man? And what was his connection to Alia? The truth, he realized, was far more complicated and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The night was restless, the air heavy with the weight of unanswered questions. Karim sat alone in his study, the room illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. The sleek elegance of the Al-Zafir mansion, usually a source of pride, now felt suffocating. His mind replayed the confrontation he had witnessed between Alia and the stranger. Her voice, sharp and resolute, had carried an edge he hadn't heard before. You shouldn't be here. The words echoed in his thoughts, weaving together a web of confusion and suspicion. Who was that man? And what was he doing in Hassan's studio? A knock at the door startled him. He turned to see Zara standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. She looked at him with a mix of curiosity and concern, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You've been quiet, she said, taking a seat across from him. Which means something's eating at you. What is it now? Karim hesitated, running a hand through his hair. Alia's hiding more than I thought. There's a man, someone she clearly doesn't want around. I saw them arguing tonight. Zara's brows furrowed. A man? Who is he? I don't know, Karim admitted, frustration tightening his voice. But he's connected to all of this. Hassan, the studio, Noura. Alia's keeping me out of her world, and I don't know why. Zara leaned forward, her tone cautious. Karim, are you sure you're ready for whatever you might find? Sometimes when you dig too deep, you uncover things you can't put back. I don't have a choice, Karim said firmly. If I don't uncover the truth, it'll destroy me. Zara sighed, shaking her head. Then tread carefully. You're playing with fire. The next day, Karim met with Latif in a discreet cafe on the outskirts of Dubai. The private investigator arrived on time, his movements precise and deliberate. He slid into the seat across from Karim, placing a slim folder on the table between them. I've found some answers, Latif said, his voice calm but laced with intrigue. Karim leaned forward, his pulse quickening. Go on. Latif opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, and notes. He gestured to an image of the man Karim had seen at the studio. His name is Tariq. He has a criminal record: fraud, embezzlement, blackmail. Recently, he's been keeping a low profile, but his ties to Hassan and Alia suggest something personal. Karim's jaw tightened. And Alia? What's her connection to him? Latif hesitated. That's where things get murky. Tariq's name appears in connection with a business Alia was involved in years ago, a venture she never disclosed publicly. It failed, but not before leaving behind a trail of debt and complications. Karim frowned, his mind racing. Alia had always been transparent about her past, or so he had thought. The idea that she had hidden something so significant felt like a betrayal. What else? Karim pressed. Latif slid another photograph forward, this one of Noura. She's not just Hassan's granddaughter. She's connected to Tariq as well. He's her older brother. The revelation hit Karim like a blow. Noura's hostility toward Alia suddenly made sense, as did Alia's careful handling of the situation. She was walking a tightrope, trying to help Hassan while keeping Tariq at bay. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Karim asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Perhaps she was trying to protect you, Latif suggested, or maybe she was trying to protect herself. Karim sat back, his mind a storm of emotions. The puzzle was starting to come together, but the picture it painted was more complex and more painful than he had anticipated. That evening, Karim prepared himself for another trip to Old Dubai. This time, he wasn't just following Alia, he was confronting her. As he donned his disguise, his heart pounded with a mixture of determination and dread. The questions that had haunted him for weeks demanded answers, and he was no longer willing to wait. When Alia stepped into the car, her expression was calm but distant. She gave him the usual address, settling into the back seat without a word. Karim glanced at her through the rearview mirror, his thoughts churning. As they entered the souk, the familiar sights and sounds of the market filled the air. Alia's gaze was steady, her movements purposeful. She stepped out of the car and made her way to Hassan's studio, her abaya flowing gracefully behind her. Karim waited a moment before following, his steps cautious but resolute. He reached the studio just as Alia and Hassan began their conversation. "This needs to stop, Alia," Hassan said, his voice heavy with concern. "You're putting yourself in danger." "I'm not afraid," Alia replied, her tone firm. "Tariq doesn't scare me. He won't hurt you, Hassan. I won't let him." Karim's breath caught. The way she spoke, the quiet intensity of her words, sent a shiver down his spine. She was protecting Hassan. But at what cost? "You can't keep carrying this burden alone," Hassan continued. "It's too much." "I don't have a choice," Alia said, her voice breaking slightly. "I owe you that much. After everything I've done, I have to make it right." Before Hassan could respond, the door burst open and Tariq stepped inside. His presence was as imposing as Karim remembered, his sharp features hardening as he took in the scene. "You're still playing the martyr, I see," Tariq said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Haven't you learned by now that you can't save everyone?" Alia stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "What are you doing here, Tariq?" "I came to remind you of your place," Tariq replied, his voice cold. "You think you can erase the past with your little acts of charity? It doesn't work that way." "This isn't about the past," Alia shot back. "This is about Hassan. He deserves better than what you've given him." Tariq laughed bitterly. "And you think you're the one to give it to him? You, with your perfect life and your endless guilt?" Alia's hands clenched at her sides, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm doing what I can. That's more than you've ever done." The tension in the room was electric, each word a spark threatening to ignite. Kareem's fists tightened as he watched from the shadows, his heart pounding. He wanted to intervene, to protect Alia, but something held him back. This was her fight, a battle she had been waging long before he had ever suspected. Tariq took a step closer to Alia, his voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Walk away, Alia, before you regret it." "I'll never regret helping Hassan," Alia said, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "And I'll never let you ruin this for him." Tariq's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. With one last glare, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. Alia stood frozen, her shoulders trembling as the weight of the confrontation settled over her. Hassan reached out, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "You don't have to do this alone," he said gently. Alia shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I do. It's my burden to bear." Kareem stepped back, his heart heavy with the realization of just how much Alia had been hiding. The woman he thought he knew was far more complex, far more broken than he had ever imagined. And yet, his love for her burned brighter than ever. But love, he realized, wasn't enough. Not yet. Not until he uncovered the full truth. And to do that, he would have to face Alia, not as Yusuf, but as her husband. The drive back to the mansion was a suffocating silence, thick with unspoken truths and raw emotions. Kareem's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white as the weight of everything he had witnessed settled heavily on him. Alia sat in the back seat, her face turned toward the window, the soft glow of the streetlights illuminating her profile. She hadn't said a word since leaving Hassan's studio, and her usual composed demeanor was visibly frayed. Kareem's mind raced. The confrontation with Tariq had shaken her. It was written in the tension in her shoulders, in the way her hands clenched tightly in her lap. But what haunted Kareem most was the fire in her voice, the quiet defiance that burned against Tariq's threats. She wasn't just protecting Hassan. She was protecting herself from something far deeper, far more personal. As the mansion's gates came into view, Alia finally broke the silence. "Thank you, Yusuf. I'll call for you if I need another ride tomorrow." Kareem glanced at her through the rearview mirror, his chest tightening. He wanted to ask her everything, to demand answers, but he knew it wasn't the time. Instead, he nodded, his voice carefully controlled. "Of course, ma'am." Alia stepped out of the car and walked briskly toward the grand entrance, her abaya flowing behind her like a shadow. Kareem watched her disappear inside, the door closing with a quiet finality that felt like a barrier between them. He didn't drive away. Not this time. Instead, he sat in the car, his heart pounding as he made a decision he couldn't take back. Tonight, he would confront her. No more disguises. No more shadows. It was time for the truth. The mansion was eerily quiet as Kareem entered. The soft hum of the central air was the only sound, its monotony broken only by the faint creak of his footsteps on the marble floor. He found Alia in the sitting room, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the sprawling gardens. Her back was to him, her posture rigid, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. For a moment he hesitated. The sight of her like this, vulnerable yet strong, struck something deep within him. He realized that he wasn't just angry or suspicious. He was afraid of what he might uncover, afraid of what it might mean for them. "Alia," he said softly, his voice breaking the stillness. She turned slowly, her expression neutral, but her eyes shadowed with something he couldn't quite place. "Kareem," she said, her voice steady, "you're home late." He took a step closer, his gaze locked on hers. "I've been home late every night, Alia. Haven't you noticed?" Her brows furrowed slightly, but she didn't respond. The silence between them stretched, heavy and charged. I know about Hassan, Karim said finally, his words deliberate, each one striking like a hammer. And Tariq, and Noura. Alia's composure faltered for a split second, a flicker of shock crossing her face before she quickly masked it. What are you talking about? You've been lying to me, Karim continued, his voice rising slightly. Sneaking off to old Dubai, meeting with Hassan, dealing with Tariq behind my back. Do you think I wouldn't notice? Do you think I wouldn't find out? Alia's eyes flashed with something, anger, fear, guilt, as she stepped forward. I didn't lie to you, she said, her tone sharp. I just didn't tell you. That's the same thing, Karim shot back, his frustration boiling over. We're supposed to be partners, Alia. Why would you hide this from me? What are you so afraid of? Her jaw tightened, and she looked away, her arms wrapping around herself as if trying to shield against his words. You wouldn't understand, she said quietly. Try me, Karim demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. Help me understand, Alia. Because right now, I feel like I don't even know you. Her shoulders trembled slightly, and for a moment he thought she might shut him out completely. But then she took a deep breath, turning back to him with eyes that were glassy with unshed tears. You want the truth? She asked, her voice trembling. Fine. The truth is that I made mistakes, Karim. Big ones, and I've been trying to fix them ever since. Karim's chest tightened as he stepped closer. What kind of mistakes? Alia hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Years ago, before we met, I started a business with Tariq. He made it sound like a perfect opportunity, a way to help people, to do something meaningful. But it was a lie. He used me, Karim. He used my name, my connections, my money. And when it all fell apart, I was left to pick up the pieces. Karim's breath hitched. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was ashamed, Alia admitted, her voice breaking. Ashamed of how easily I was fooled, ashamed of the damage I caused, and when we got married, I thought I could leave it all behind. But then Tariq came back, and everything I tried to bury came rushing to the surface. Karim's fists clenched at his sides, anger burning in his chest. And Hassan? Noura? Where do they fit into this? Hassan was one of the people Tariq hurt, Alia explained, tears streaming down her face now. He invested everything he had into our business, believing in the promises Tariq made. When it collapsed, he lost everything. His home, his livelihood, his reputation. I've been trying to help him rebuild, to make amends for what Tariq did. Karim's heart ached at the pain in her voice, but his mind was still spinning. And Noura? She hates me, Alia said simply. She blames me for everything that happened to her grandfather. And she's not wrong. I didn't stop Tariq when I should have. I let it happen. And now I'm trying to make it right. Karim was silent, the weight of her confession settling over him like a storm cloud. He had spent weeks searching for answers, only to find a truth that was both devastating and deeply human. Alia wasn't a villain. She wasn't a liar. She was a woman carrying the crushing weight of her past, trying to atone for mistakes that weren't entirely her own. I should have told you, Alia said softly, breaking the silence. I know that now. But I was scared, Karim. Scared that you would see me differently. That you would see my past and not the woman you married. Karim stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. Alia, he said, his voice raw with emotion, I don't care about your past. I care about you. And I'm not going to let Tariq or anyone else take you away from me. Alia looked up at him, her eyes searching his for something, hope, forgiveness, love. Slowly she nodded, her hands tightening around his. I don't want to lose you, Karim. You won't, he promised, pulling her into his arms. We'll face this together, whatever it takes. As they stood there, holding on to each other like lifelines, Kareem felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in weeks. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he believed they could navigate it, together. The early morning sun seeped through the curtains of the Al-Zafir mansion, casting soft golden light across the room. Kareem stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling gardens below. The events of the previous night played over and over in his mind. Alia's confession, her tears, the raw vulnerability in her voice. It was more than he had ever expected. He turned his gaze to the bed, where Alia lay still, her breathing steady as she slept. She looked peaceful, but Kareem knew the turmoil beneath her calm facade. She had been carrying her burden alone for so long, and now, for the first time, she had let him in. But that was only the beginning. There was still so much they had to face. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking the quiet. Kareem grabbed it quickly, stepping into the hallway to avoid waking Alia. He glanced at the screen. It was Latif. "Latif," Kareem said quietly, his voice tense. "Do you have something for me?" "More than something," Latif replied, his tone serious. "I've been digging into Tariq's recent activities, and I found a trail. He's been funneling money through a series of shell companies using Hassan's name as a cover." Kareem's grip on the phone tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means Tariq is up to something big," Latif continued. "And he's using Hassan's reputation to shield himself. Whatever it is, it's illegal. And if Hassan gets caught in the middle, it could ruin him." Kareem's jaw clenched, anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Does Alia know about this?" "I don't think so," Latif said. "From what I can tell, she's been focused on helping Hassan rebuild his studio and supporting Noura. Tariq's scheme is happening behind the scenes." Kareem exhaled sharply, his mind racing. Tariq wasn't just a threat to Hassan. He was a threat to Alia, to everything she had been fighting to protect. "What's the next step?" Kareem asked. "I can keep tracking Tariq's movements," Latif said. "But if you want to stop him, you'll need to confront him directly, and you'll need proof." "Then get it," Kareem said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Later that afternoon, Kareem found Alia in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath the shade of a large date palm. She was reading, her expression serene, but he could see the tension in the way she held the book, her fingers gripping the edges tightly. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. When she looked up, her eyes softened, and she offered him a small smile. "You've been quiet," Alia said, closing the book and setting it aside. "Is everything all right?" Kareem sat down beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I spoke to Latif this morning. He's been investigating Tariq." Alia's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "And?" Kareem hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Tariq is using Hassan. He's using his name to cover up some kind of financial scheme. If it comes to light, it could destroy everything Hassan has left." Alia's face paled, her eyes widening. "Number, that can't be true. Tariq, he wouldn't." "Yes, he would," Kareem said, his voice firm. "You said it yourself. He used you before. This is who he is, Alia. He doesn't care who gets hurt as long as he gets what he wants." Alia's shoulders sagged, the weight of Kareem's words sinking in. I thought I was helping Hassan, that I was making things right. But if Tariq is involved..." "It's not your fault," Kareem said gently, placing a hand on her arm. "You couldn't have known, but now that we do, we can stop him." Alia looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and determination. "How?" "Latif is gathering evidence," Kareem said. "Once we have enough to expose Tariq, we'll take it to the authorities. But until then, we need to be careful. Tariq can't know we're onto him." Alia nodded, her jaw tightening. I won't let him hurt Hassan, or Noura. Not again. Karim squeezed her hand, his resolve hardening. Neither will I. That evening, Karim returned to old Dubai, this time without his disguise. He parked near Hassan's studio and approached the building with purpose. When he entered, Hassan looked up from his easel, surprise flickering across his face. Karim, Hassan said, setting down his brush. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, Karim said, his tone serious. He glanced around the room. Where's Noura? She's out running errands, Hassan replied, a note of concern creeping into his voice. What's going on? Karim sat down across from him, meeting his gaze. It's about Tariq. He's been using your name, Hassan. He's setting you up as a front for some kind of illegal scheme. Hassan's eyes widened, his face paling. That's not possible. Tariq wouldn't— Yes, he would, Karim interrupted. And he has. I've seen the evidence. Latif is digging deeper, but we need to be prepared. If this comes to light, it could ruin you. Hassan slumped back in his chair, his hands trembling slightly. I trusted him. He's my grandson, Karim. How could he do this? Karim's expression softened. I don't think he sees it that way. To Tariq, people are tools. He used Alia the same way, and now he's using you. But we can stop him. How? Hassan asked, his voice filled with a mix of desperation and hope. By exposing him, Karim said. But we'll need your help. Anything you can give us, documents, records, anything Tariq has asked you to sign, it could be the key to bringing him down. Hassan nodded slowly, determination hardening his features. I'll do whatever it takes. I won't let him destroy what little I have left. As Karim left the studio, the cool night air wrapped around him, carrying with it a sense of urgency. The pieces were finally coming together, but the danger was greater than ever. Tariq was a man who thrived in the shadows, and if he realized they were closing in, he wouldn't hesitate to strike back. Karim's phone buzzed as he reached his car. It was a message from Latif. We need to talk. Now. He called immediately, his pulse quickening. Latif answered on the first ring. What is it? Tariq knows, Latif said, his tone grim. He's already taking steps to cover his tracks. If we're going to stop him, we need to act fast. How fast? Karim asked, his voice tightening. Tomorrow, Latif replied. Meet me in the city. I'll have everything ready. Karim ended the call, his mind racing. Tomorrow, everything would come to a head. He didn't know what would happen, but one thing was certain. He and Alia were in this together. And no matter what it took, they would protect the people they cared about. As he drove back to the mansion, the city lights blurred in the distance, their brilliance dimmed by the storm brewing in his heart. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had his resolve. For Alia, for Hassan, for the truth, he would face whatever came next. The streets of Dubai were eerily quiet in the early morning hours. Karim's car cut through the stillness like a blade, its engine humming steadily as he navigated the empty roads. Latif's message from the night before had left little room for delay. Tariq was moving to cover his tracks, and they had no time to lose. Karim's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he replayed his conversation with Alia from the night before. She had been quiet after he told her about Latif's findings, her gaze distant but resolute. The tension between them was palpable, but so was their shared determination. This wasn't just about Hassan or Tariq anymore, it was about reclaiming control over their lives. When Karim arrived at the rendezvous point, Latif was already waiting, leaning against his car in a quiet parking lot near the city's outskirts. The investigator looked up as Karim approached, his expression grim. "Do you have it?" Karim asked, stepping out of his car. Latif nodded, holding up a small USB drive. "This is everything. Financial records, emails, contracts. It's enough to expose Tariq and shut down his operation." Kareem's chest tightened as he took the drive, its weight feeling heavier than it should. "And the authorities?" "They're ready," Latif said. "Once we hand this over, they'll take it from there. But there's one problem." Kareem frowned. "What is it?" "Tariq knows we're onto him," Latif said. "I've been tracking his movements, and he's been making calls to his contacts in the underworld. He's desperate, Kareem. That makes him dangerous." Kareem's jaw tightened. "Then we need to act now, before he has a chance to retaliate." Latif nodded. "I'll handle the handoff to the authorities. You should stay clear. If Tariq finds out you're involved, he already knows I'm involved." Kareem interrupted, his voice firm. "And I'm not going to sit on the sidelines while this unfolds." Latif studied him for a moment before nodding reluctantly. "Just be careful. Tariq isn't the kind of man who plays fair." When Kareem returned to the mansion, Alia was waiting for him in the sitting room. She stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself as she gazed out at the gardens. The morning light cast a soft glow around her, but her expression was anything but serene. "He's going to fight back, isn't he?" Alia asked quietly, not turning around. Kareem stepped closer, his heart aching at the worry in her voice. "He might try," he admitted, "but we're ready for him. Latif has everything we need to take him down." Alia turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "And what about Hassan? What if Tariq tries to drag him down with him?" "We won't let that happen," Kareem said firmly. "Hassan is innocent. The evidence proves that. Tariq won't be able to use him as a shield anymore." Alia nodded slowly, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. "I hate that it's come to this," she said softly. "I thought I could make things right without tearing everything apart." "You have been making things right," Kareem said, stepping closer and taking her hands in his. "You've been fighting for Hassan, for Noura, for everyone Tariq hurt. This isn't your fault, Alia. It's his." A tear slipped down her cheek, and Kareem gently brushed it away. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice steady. "Together." The day passed in a haze of tension and preparation. Latif kept Kareem updated as he coordinated with the authorities, ensuring everything was in place for Tariq's downfall. Meanwhile, Kareem stayed close to Alia, knowing she was carrying the weight of her past like a heavy chain around her neck. As evening fell, a message from Latif sent Kareem's heart racing. "Tariq knows. He's coming after Hassan. Be ready." Kareem didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and turned to Alia. "We have to go. Tariq is making his move." Alia's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "Hassan." "We'll get to him before Tariq does," Kareem said, his voice firm. "Let's go." The drive to Hassan's studio felt like an eternity, every second stretching into an unbearable silence. Alia sat beside Kareem, her hands gripping her abaya tightly as she stared straight ahead. The air between them was charged with urgency, their shared fear unspoken but palpable. When they arrived, the studio was eerily quiet, its windows dark. Kareem parked the car and stepped out, scanning the area for any signs of Tariq or his men. Alia followed close behind, her breath hitching as they approached the entrance. "Hassan?" Alia called softly, her voice trembling. "It's me. Are you here?" A faint sound came from the back of the studio, and Kareem's instincts flared. He motioned for Alia to stay behind as he stepped cautiously toward the noise. Pushing open the door to the back room, he found Hassan sitting on the floor, his hands bound and his face bruised. "Hassan!" Kareem rushed to his side, quickly untying him. "What happened? Where's Tariq?" Hassan winced as he sat up, his voice hoarse. He was here. He said this isn't over. He left just before you arrived. Alia appeared in the doorway, her face pale with worry. Hassan, are you all right? I'll be fine, Hassan said, his voice steady despite his injuries. But Tariq, he's gone mad. He said he's coming after you next, Alia. He blames you for everything. Kareem's blood ran cold. We need to get out of here, now. As they drove away from the studio, Kareem's mind raced. Tariq was escalating, and it was only a matter of time before he made his next move. He glanced at Alia, who sat beside him, her hands trembling in her lap. We'll be safe, Kareem said, his voice firm. I won't let Tariq get to you. Alia turned to him, her eyes filled with fear and determination. This has to end, Kareem. He can't keep doing this. It will end, Kareem promised. Latif has the evidence. The authorities are closing in. Tariq's running out of time. But even as he spoke the words, a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was far from over. Tariq was a man backed into a corner, and Kareem knew all too well how dangerous that made him. As they neared the mansion, Kareem's phone buzzed with a call from Latif. He answered quickly, his voice tense. What is it? Tariq's on the move, Latif said. But the authorities are ready. They'll have him in custody before the night is over. Kareem exhaled, a flicker of relief breaking through his tension. Good. Let me know as soon as it's done. He ended the call and turned to Alia, his hand reaching for hers. It's almost over, he said softly. We're almost free. Alia nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Thank you, Kareem, for everything. As the car pulled into the driveway of the mansion, Kareem felt a renewed sense of hope. The battle wasn't over, but the tide was turning. Together, he and Alia had faced their pasts, their fears and their doubts, and they had emerged stronger. The fight for the truth had cost them dearly, but it had also brought them closer than ever. And now, as the darkness began to lift, they stood ready to face whatever came next, together. The Al-Zafir mansion felt like a fortress that night, its towering gates and sprawling gardens a fragile shield against the storm brewing on the horizon. Kareem paced the length of his study, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. Latif had assured him that the authorities were closing in on Tariq, but every passing minute felt like an eternity. Alia sat in a chair near the fireplace, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her abaya. Her eyes followed Kareem as he moved, her worry etched into every line of her face. Do you think it's over? She asked quietly, her voice breaking the silence. Kareem stopped mid-step, turning to face her. Not yet, he admitted, but it will be. Tariq has nowhere left to run. Alia nodded, but the tension in her posture didn't ease. She glanced toward the large windows, where the lights of the city twinkled faintly in the distance. He's unpredictable, Kareem. Desperate men don't think rationally. I know, Kareem said, his jaw tightening. That's why I'm not taking any chances. The weight of his words hung in the air, unspoken, but understood. They both knew Tariq wasn't the type to go quietly, and until he was behind bars, the threat he posed loomed over them like a shadow. Kareem's phone buzzed, the sharp sound cutting through the tense quiet. He answered immediately, his voice tense. Latif. It's done, Latif said, his tone firm but cautious. The authorities have everything they need. Warrants have been issued, and they're moving in now. Kareem exhaled slowly, a flicker of relief breaking through the tension in his chest. Thank you, Latif. Keep me updated. He ended the call and turned to Alia, his expression softening. They've got him. It's only a matter of time now. Alia's shoulders sagged, a quiet breath escaping her lips. Finally. Kareem moved to her side, taking her hands in his. "We're almost there, Alia. After this we can put all of it behind us." Alia met his gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know how to thank you, Kareem, for standing by me even when I couldn't tell you everything." "You don't need to thank me," Kareem said softly. "We're in this together. Always." The peace was short-lived. Hours later, the sound of the mansion's alarm system pierced the quiet night, sending a jolt of adrenaline through Kareem. He was on his feet in an instant, his heart pounding as he grabbed his phone to check the security feed. On the screen, the image was clear. A car idling just outside the gates, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Kareem recognized the vehicle immediately. Tariq. "What is it?" Alia asked, appearing at his side, her voice trembling. "It's him," Kareem said, his voice tight. "He's here." Alia's face paled, and she instinctively reached for his arm. "What do we do?" Kareem's mind raced. The security team had been alerted and would intercept Tariq before he could get inside, but the mere fact that he had come to their home sent a chill down Kareem's spine. Tariq wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to send a message. Kareem turned to Alia, his voice firm. "Stay here. Lock the doors and don't let anyone in." "Kareem, no." "I'll handle this," he said, cutting her off. "I won't let him hurt you." Alia hesitated, fear and defiance warring in her expression, but she finally nodded. "Be careful." Kareem stepped outside, his movements deliberate and controlled. The night air was crisp, the silence broken only by the hum of Tariq's car engine. As Kareem approached the gate, the vehicle's door swung open and Tariq stepped out, his posture casual but his eyes sharp. "Kareem," Tariq said, his voice smooth but laced with venom. "You've been busy." "Tariq," Kareem replied, his tone cold. "You've made a mistake coming here." Tariq chuckled, his smile dripping with malice. "A mistake? No, Kareem. The mistake was thinking you could outmaneuver me." "You're done, Tariq," Kareem said, his voice steady. "The authorities have everything they need. It's over." Tariq's smile faltered for a brief moment before he recovered, his expression hardening. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything? I built my life from the ground up, Kareem. I don't go down without a fight." "You've been fighting the wrong battles," Kareem said, stepping closer. "And now, it's cost you everything." Tariq's eyes narrowed, his facade cracking. "You think you're better than me? Hiding behind your wealth and power, pretending you're some kind of savior? You're no different from me, Kareem. You just wear a prettier mask." "I don't need to justify myself to you," Kareem said, his voice calm but firm. "But I'll tell you this. I won't let you drag down the people I care about. Not Alia, not Hassan, not anyone." Tariq's fists clenched at his sides, his body taut with anger. For a moment Kareem thought he might lash out, but the sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension like a knife. Tariq's head snapped toward the sound, his expression twisting into one of fury and defeat. "You called them," Tariq spat, his voice low and dangerous. "They were already coming," Kareem said. "You made sure of that." The sirens grew louder, and flashing blue lights illuminated the darkness as police cars pulled up to the gates. Officers poured out, their movements swift and precise as they surrounded Tariq. "This isn't over," Tariq said, his voice seething with hatred. "You think you've won, but you haven't." "It's over, Tariq," Kareem said, his gaze steady, "and it's time for you to face the consequences." Tariq glared at him, his jaw tight, but he didn't resist as the officers moved in. Kareem watched in silence as they cuffed Tariq and led him to one of the waiting cars. The night seemed to exhale with relief as the car disappeared into the distance, taking Tariq with it. When Kareem returned to the mansion, Alia was waiting for him in the foyer, her expression a mix of fear and hope. As soon as she saw him, she rushed forward, throwing her arms around him. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's over," Karim said softly, holding her close. "He's gone." Alia exhaled a shaky breath, her grip on him tightening. "I was so scared, Karim. I thought we'd never be free of him." Karim pulled back slightly, his hands cupping her face as he met her gaze. "You're safe now. We're safe. And we can finally move forward." Tears slipped down Alia's cheeks, but her smile was genuine, filled with a quiet strength that made Karim's heart ache. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me," Karim said, his voice gentle. "I'd do it all again if it meant keeping you safe." They stood together in the quiet of the mansion, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift. The fight had been long and grueling, but they had come out on the other side stronger, their bond unbreakable. For the first time in what felt like forever, Karim allowed himself to hope. The darkness was behind them, and a new chapter awaited, a chapter filled with love, trust, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Together. The days following Tariq's arrest were marked by an eerie stillness, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Inside the Al-Zafir mansion, that stillness was even more profound, stretching like a fragile thread between Karim and Alia. Though the immediate danger was gone, the wounds left by the ordeal were still raw, unspoken, but ever present. Karim stood in the living room, his eyes scanning the ornate space that had once been a symbol of security. Now, it felt like an echo chamber for the decisions and secrets that had led them here. He turned as Alia entered the room, her steps tentative but purposeful. She looked at him with a mixture of relief and weariness. "They confirmed it," Alia said softly, holding a folded letter in her hands. "Tariq's been charged. The evidence Latif provided was enough to secure a solid case." Karim nodded, his jaw tightening. "It's the justice he deserves." Alia's gaze dropped to the letter. "It feels surreal, doesn't it? After everything, it's finally over." "Is it?" Karim asked, his voice heavier than he intended. "Tariq's gone, but the damage he left behind is still here. With Hassan, Noura, with us." Alia's shoulders sagged, her expression crumpling slightly. "I know. And I've been thinking about that, about how to make things right." Karim stepped closer, his voice softening. "Alia, you've been trying to fix this from the moment it started. You've done more than anyone could have asked of you." "Not enough," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Not for Noura. She still hates me, Karim. She might never forgive me." Karim placed his hands gently on her shoulders, his eyes searching hers. "Maybe forgiveness isn't the goal. Maybe it's enough to show her that you're still here, still willing to fight for them, even if she doesn't accept it." Alia's eyes glistened, her lips trembling as she nodded. "I hope so. I don't know where to start." "Let's start together," Karim said. "With Hassan." Later that afternoon, Karim and Alia drove to Hassan's studio. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the narrow streets of old Dubai. The familiar sights and sounds of the souk were quieter now, subdued in the wake of recent events. When they arrived, Alia hesitated before stepping out of the car. Karim reached for her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You're not alone," he said. She nodded, drawing strength from his words as they approached the studio. The door creaked softly as Karim pushed it open, revealing the familiar space filled with canvases and paints. Hassan looked up from his easel, his expression lighting with a mixture of surprise and relief. "Alia," Hassan said, setting down his brush. "Karim, it's good to see you both." "We needed to see you," Alia said, stepping forward, "to make sure you're all right." Hassan smiled faintly, his weathered face betraying the wear of recent events. "I'm fine, my dear. Thanks to both of you, Tariq's gone. That's all the peace I need." "It shouldn't have come to this," Alia said, her voice trembling. "I should have done more to stop him sooner. I should have protected you." "You've done more than enough," Hassan said, his tone firm. "If not for you, I would have lost everything. You gave me back my art, my dignity. That's something Tariq could never take from me." Alia blinked rapidly, tears threatening to spill as she stepped closer. "But Noura is stubborn," Hassan interrupted gently, "but she's also protective. She's been through a lot, Alia. Give her time." Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed from the back room. Noura appeared in the doorway, her expression guarded as her eyes flicked between Alia and Karim. The air grew tense, the weight of unspoken words filling the space. "I didn't expect to see you here," Noura said, her tone cool. "We came to check on your grandfather," Alia replied, her voice steady despite the tension. "To make sure he's all right." Noura folded her arms, her gaze narrowing. "And now that Tariq's gone, you think everything's fine? That we can just move on like none of this happened?" "No," Alia said, stepping forward. "I don't expect you to move on, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep helping your grandfather, and I'll keep trying to make things right, whether you accept it or not." Nora's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and uncertainty. For a long moment she said nothing, the room charged with the weight of her silence. Then finally she exhaled sharply, her posture softening just slightly. "You really don't give up, do you?" Noura said, her voice quieter now. "No," Alia said simply. "Not when it comes to the people I care about." Noura's gaze lingered on Alia for a moment longer, before she turned away, muttering under her breath, "Maybe you're not as bad as I thought." Hassan chuckled softly, the tension in the room easing as he placed a hand on Noura's shoulder. "That's about as close to a compliment as you'll get from her." Alia smiled faintly, the hint of hope flickering in her expression. "It's a start." As the evening wore on, the four of them shared tea in the quiet comfort of the studio. The conversation was lighter now, the shadows of the past beginning to lift. For the first time in weeks, Alia allowed herself to relax, the burden on her heart easing just a little. When it was time to leave, Hassan walked them to the door, his expression warm as he shook Karim's hand. "You've been a good man to her," Hassan said quietly. "Don't stop now." "I won't," Karim replied, his voice steady. "You have my word." Alia hugged Hassan tightly, her voice soft as she whispered, "Thank you for everything." As they walked back to the car, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Karim glanced at Alia. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," she said, her smile small but genuine. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like we're going to be okay." Karim reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "We are, Alia. We've made it through the worst, and now we can start building something better." Alia leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Together?" "Always," Karim said, his heart full as he held her close. As they drove home, the weight of the past began to fade, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time they could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and together they were ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun bathed Dubai in a warm, golden glow, its rays reflecting off the city's sleek skyline. In the Al Zafir mansion, the light filtered through the large windows of the dining room, casting a serene glow over the breakfast table. Karim sat across from Alia, sipping his coffee, the tension of the past weeks now a distant memory. There was a quiet understanding between them, a peace that had been hard won. As Alia reached for her cup, Karim noticed the slight tremble in her hand. It wasn't fear this time, it was anticipation. Today was a turning point, one they had been building toward since Tariq's arrest. "You're nervous," Karim said gently, his voice breaking the comfortable silence. Alia looked up at him, offering a small smile. "A little. It's been so long since I've done something like this." "You'll be amazing," Karim said, his confidence in her unwavering. "Hassan believes in you. Noura, well, she's coming around." Alia chuckled softly, the sound lighter than it had been in months. "I think that's the closest thing to approval I'll get from her." "It's enough," Karim said. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Today is about starting fresh, Alia. Not just for them, but for you too." Alia nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Thank you, Karim, for standing by me, even when I didn't deserve it." "You've always deserved it," he said firmly, "and I'll stand by you every step of the way." By mid-morning they arrived at the heart of Old Dubai, where the newly restored art centre stood as a beacon of hope amidst the bustling souk. The building, once worn and forgotten, now gleamed with fresh paint and intricate designs that paid homage to Hassan's artistic legacy. Its grand opening had drawn a small but eager crowd, a mixture of art enthusiasts, local residents, and curious passers-by. As Karim and Alia stepped out of the car, they were greeted by Hassan, who looked more alive than Karim had ever seen him. His eyes sparkled with pride, his smile wide and genuine. "You made it," Hassan said, shaking Karim's hand before turning to Alia. "And you look radiant, my dear." "Thank you, Hassan," Alia said warmly. "This day belongs to you, to your work." "To all of us," Hassan corrected, his voice filled with gratitude. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." The sound of a microphone crackling to life drew their attention to the stage set up in front of the centre. A young MC welcomed the crowd, her voice cheerful as she introduced the event. Alia's name was mentioned, drawing murmurs of recognition and polite applause. She glanced at Karim, her nerves returning for a moment. "You'll do great," Karim whispered, squeezing her hand. "Just speak from your heart." Alia nodded, taking a deep breath as she made her way to the stage. The crowd's hum quieted as she stepped up to the microphone, her graceful presence commanding their attention. "Thank you all for being here today," Alia began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This art centre is more than just a building. It's a symbol of resilience, creativity, and the power of community. Hassan's work has inspired so many, including me, and it's an honor to be part of preserving his legacy." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. Her gaze lingered on Noura, who stood near the back, her expression unreadable. "I won't pretend that the journey to this moment was easy," Alia continued, her voice softening. "There were mistakes made, lessons learned, and relationships tested. But through it all, I've learned that the greatest gift we can give each other is understanding. Understanding and forgiveness." A ripple of emotion passed through the crowd. Alia's words weren't just for them. They were for Noura, for Hassan, and for herself. As she stepped down from the stage, the applause was warm and genuine. Karim met her at the bottom of the steps, his pride in her shining through his smile. "You were incredible," he said, pulling her into a brief embrace. Before Alia could respond, Noura approached them, her expression hesitant but determined. For a moment none of them spoke, the tension between Alia and Noura palpable. "You meant what you said?" Noura asked finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Every word," Alia replied, her gaze steady. "I can't change the past, Noura, but I can promise to do better. For Hassan, for you." Noura studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I still don't trust you completely, but maybe that can change." Alia's breath caught, her eyes glistening as she nodded. I'd like that. Hassan stepped forward, his smile wide as he placed a hand on Noura's shoulder. It's a new beginning, for all of us. The event continued well into the afternoon, the art center buzzing with life as visitors admired Hassan's work. Karim watched Alia from across the room as she spoke with guests, her confidence growing with each interaction. She was in her element, and he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. You're a lucky man, Hassan said, appearing at Karim's side. I know, Karim replied, his gaze never leaving Alia. She's stronger than she gives herself credit for. She's found her strength, Hassan said, and she's found it in you too. Don't let her forget that. I won't, Karim promised, his voice steady. That evening, as the city lights sparkled in the distance, Karim and Alia returned home, their hearts lighter than they had been in months. They stood on the balcony, the cool night air wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. You did it, Karim said, his arm around her waist. The center is everything you hoped it would be. It's just the beginning, Alia said, leaning into him. There's still so much more to do. And we'll do it together, Karim said. Whatever comes next, we'll face it side by side. Alia looked up at him, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. I don't know what I would have done without you. You'll never have to find out, Karim said, his voice low but resolute. I'm not going anywhere, Alia. Not now. Not ever. As they stood there, the weight of their journey finally began to lift. The road ahead was open, filled with possibility, and for the first time in a long time, they allowed themselves to dream. Together, they had faced the darkness. Together, they had found the light. And together, they were ready to build a future filled with hope, love, and endless potential.